Good evening, ma. So let me begin the session. Today we will discuss this topic of post-modernism. Okay, one very important topic for your exam. UPSC asked it both for 10 marker, also 15 marker. So yeah, for both 10 marker and 15 marker, this topic is important. And somehow UPSC in every alternate year, UPSC is asking this question. That important. So this topic is for exam. So now I'm sharing the screen. Please note. And one more simple thing, there is always this misconception that this is one of the toughest topics, or this topic is difficult to understand, or all these kind of things. Just pay a little attention. Of course, there are certain terms which are slightly difficult to understand, but we will try to discuss in such a way that hereafter you should not find it uncomfortable to prepare for this topic. I'm sharing the screen, please note. So yes, this is what is post-modern anthropological theory or post-modernist thought. Be aware of the fact that interpretative anthropology, which we have already studied, is also a good example of post-modernist theory. And even to some extent, symbolic anthropology also is an example of post-modernist theory. See, before going little further into understanding what's the idea of post-modernity, first we should be aware of what is modernity. See, modernity in simplest possible terms, it's nothing but, see, it's that period of time. Say, for instance, people say it has begun in 1780, and especially in humanities, people believe that the so-called modernity has ended by 1989, and the so-called modern phase or phase of modernity has its implications in several fields: in economic field, legal political field, in intellectual field, in social or in societal perspective. It has its influence on all possible fields. Say, it's easy to understand. In the economic context, industrial revolution happened in the England, and yes, massive capital amassment has happened during this phase. And in the legal political aspects, democracy has been established as the most vibrant, and democracy has been established as the most reliable and trustworthy form of government all over the world. And intellectually, a lot of emphasis has been given on rational thought process. A lot of emphasis has been given on objectivity and positivism. I'll tell you what positivism is. And in the social perspective also, big industrial groups have emerged. Now it has taken the form of multinational corporations. So all these things are the phenomenon or important ideas behind modernity. See, on its face, it might seem like benign. On its face, it might seem like something which has done good to the society. But in reality, what social scientists has observed that this modernity is nothing great, nothing good has happened in modernity. Modernity is dominated by wealthy. Modernity is dominated by upper class, and the condition of the masses has only deteriorated after this modernity. Modernity has led to deepening of the inequalities. Modernity has led to systematic destruction of environment. Modernity has led to subjugation and bulldozing of the native cultures and indigenous cultures. Likewise, social scientists interpret that modernity is not as good and not as positive as it was often projected. It's true that modernity has generated huge wealth. It's true that modernity has contributed to substantial technological progress, which in turn has contributed to civilizational progress. Yes, all these things have happened. But yes, modernity has disempowered people. Modernity has disenfranchised people, and modernity made people hopeless and desperate. So yes, that is how social scientists look at modernity, and not everything is good about modernity, and it calls for establishment of a post-modernity or post-modern tradition by social scientists. But we are more interested in post-modernist trend in intellectual aspects. We are not interested in post-modernist trend in political science. We are not interested in post-modernist trends in academic theory, as we are studying a subject called as anthropology, which is placed in the domain of humanities, to try to study postmodernism in the context of humanities, and to be more specific, in the context of anthropology, right? And this slide should further deepen your understanding of the concept of modernity and post-modernity. Observe carefully, it began in 1890 until 1945. No, but now largely there is an understanding that post-modernity has begun from 1990s, and modernism was based on using rational, logical means to gain knowledge. It was characterized by a hierarchical and organized and determinate nature of knowledge. You must be thinking, what is this hierarchical and organized and determinate nature of knowledge? It's very simple. Hierarchical means general trend is that, or general view among most of us is that all knowledge that has come from West is superior when compared to knowledge which has come from East, isn't it? We often have this tendency to quote that it has been established by some Western university. This has been established by some American scholar or by some American research and development. Means we tried to arrange the knowledge in hierarchies, wherein we started treating that knowledge which has emanated, or the knowledge which was generated from the West, as superior, and the knowledge which has come from East, or knowledge which has come from developing and LDCs, as inferior. It's not always the same. Just because they are advanced economies doesn't mean that they have to possess advanced knowledge. In this way, we try to systematically undermine the knowledge that's being produced in the that is produced in the developing and LDCs, and the knowledge which is already present in the developing and LDCs, like indigenous knowledge or native knowledge. And we have this, penchant, or we have this inclination to make knowledge in an organized manner. But not all knowledge has to be in an organized manner. If we try to organize or systematize knowledge, the problems of the society are not organized. The problems or the issues which society faces, they are very random in nature. But we should not look for solutions to the random social problems in an organized or systematic way of knowledge. That is one correct. And modernist approach claims itself to be objective, theoretical, and analytical. Claims itself to be objective, theoretical, and analytical. Objective means something which is not subjective. Means it can be verified by anyone. It can be verified by anyone, and the outcome or the result would be same according to modernism. Then what is postmodernism, which began after World War II? Postmodernism denied the application of logical thinking. Postmodernism say that not everything has to be seen in the lens of logical thinking. There are certain things wherein you have to understand people's emotions, people's feelings. Say if I strictly apply logical thinking, and if I question, say there is one forest, and this forest is inhabited by certain tribal groups, and suddenly we got to know that this forest is sitting on a huge wealth of uranium reserves. And if I strictly interpret in a logical way, what's wrong in displacing some 1,000 or 1,500 tribals. We say that why not we give them sophisticated apartments somewhere in an urban area, we give them money, let them lead a happy life. Who are we to decide what's their idea of happiness? Who are we to displace them from their native habitats to which they have strong attachment or to which they have linkages for centuries together? So not every time or in not every case our logical thinking would work, isn't it? Then it was based on, of course, anarchical, non-totalized and indeterminate state of knowledge. And non-anarchical means it's not that knowledge has to emanate from any particular source. It's like anarchy. Knowledge can come from any source. Non-totalized means not that every time you have to put knowledge in certain perspective. And indeterminate means it's not that, see, source of knowledge or why the knowledge is produced need not always be specific. Okay, you need not write these terms in exam like anarchical, non-totalized and indeterminate. I'm just showing the slide for you to understand the difference between modernism and postmodernism. And postmodernist approach was based on subjectivity. Means it gives scope or it gives value for subjectivity. So this simple difference between modernism and postmodernism you should understand before we go further into the topic of postmodernist traditions. In UPSC, we will not ask you the difference between modernism and postmodernism. This slide I have included just to make you understand the concept of modernity so that you will understand better the idea of postmodernity. Right? Now, postmodernism is an umbrella term for several theories which are built on the premise that positivist or so-called objective views of human phenomenon are inherently limited and therefore not unbiased in the ways proponents believe them to be. It brings questions of power, history, and the culture concept itself into the center of anthropological analysis. So what postmodernist theories question is that though this anthropologists, they are claiming that the knowledge which we have generated, especially the ethnographies which we have produced, are objective, but they cannot be objective. They are nothing but subjective interpretations of the anthropologists. Even if anthropologists claim that what they are producing is an objective knowledge, it would not be correct. It would be still subjective according to postmodernist scholars. And yes, postmodernism takes another important thing, that is, it says that production of the knowledge is often linked to people in power. It says that this knowledge is produced or this knowledge has come from people so this knowledge has come from people who are considered powerful. This knowledge has come from people who are considered as powerful. So people who are considered powerful or people who are powerful, if they are the ones who are producing knowledge, they have a tendency to produce knowledge which can further their interests, or they have a tendency to portray that the knowledge which has emanated, the knowledge which they have produced is superior. So they try to establish this linkage between power and they have this tendency to establish linkage between power and the source of production of knowledge, right? So moving a little further, let's try to understand this. This ideas are not relevant to us because they are not included in our syllabus. You can just ignore that part. Positivism. Just now I have used this term positivism. So what is this positivism? Positivism is nothing but approach to the study of society that relies specifically on scientific evidence such as experiments and statistics to reveal the true nature of how society operates. Positivism is a term which is very close or which is similar to the idea of objectivity. So modernity has emphasized on positivity. Modernity has emphasized on objectivity, but postmodernism says that such a positivism does not exist. Such a positivism does not exist because often the source of knowledge is nothing but the people who are in power. The source of knowledge is nothing but people who are in power. Okay. Yeah. Just 1 second more. Sorry for interruption. So this is what we're discussing, right? Where I introduced you to the idea of modernity. Later, I tried to explain you the difference between modernism and postmodernism. After that, I have explained you the idea of positivism, and postmodernist scholars say that there is nothing like positivism. Positive is not possible. Objectivity is not possible, especially when it comes to study of the culture, especially when it comes to study of the cultural phenomenon, according to postmodernist scholars. So yes, just observe this difference between positivism and interpretivism, isn't it? I just told that interpretive anthropology is a good example of postmodernist anthropology, right? See, positivism says or enables control and precision, returns verifiable data, isn't it? Data has to be verifiable by everyone. And yes, data can be inflexible, but fails to address aspects such as personal beliefs, experiences, and motivations. Whereas interpretivism, it cannot produce generalized laws, which positivism can produce. You will understand what that generalized laws are as we go a little further into the discussion. And data cannot be guaranteed as objective and true. Yes, that is one negative aspect of interpretivism for that matter, and also postmodernism for that matter. Data is flexible and it enables understanding of personal beliefs, experiences, and motivism. So that is the difference between positivism and interpretivism. You have to be aware of these simple ideas. Then going a little further, postmodernist anthropology is also considered as a reflexive anthropology. What is this reflexivity? Why it is considered as reflexive anthropology? See, as this idea suggests, it's an inward view of anthropology. Inward view of anthropology means it calls for anthropologists to examine themselves, to self-examine themselves if they are really unbiased, if the knowledge they are claiming to be objective is really objective. So they kind of ask, they kind of request the ethnographer to ask himself, to examine himself, to introspect whether the knowledge which he is producing is really correct or really objective as he is claiming. So it's a kind of inward view. Inward view means asking them to self-examine. And polyphony is its important character, means many competing voices from different segments and groups, means listen to everybody, listen to all perspectives. You are going to study particular tribe, you are going to study particular culture group, don't just talk to the people whom you have access to. Try to talk even to the last person. Only then you will try to understand. Only then, after listening to their voices, maybe those voices are marginalized, maybe those voices are subjugated, you have to listen to those voices if you really have to understand, or if you have to have the complete knowledge of the culture. Then attention to those voices are chosen to represent the group, and how one goes about presenting the culture and voices study. It's nothing but they're trying to say, try to listen to as many people, try to listen to as many voices as possible. So reflexivity induces to examine the problem in the field, to examine anthropology as a source of generating knowledge itself. So to look at anthropology as a tool for gathering data, and to publicly examine the anthropologist's response to field situation. Simply put, it is asking anthropologists to be more mindful, to examine themselves, to examine the tools, methodologies, and methods they are using, whether they are really objective as they are claiming, or they are not as objective as they are claiming for. That is this idea of reflexivity and induction of reflexive thinking, or induction of reflexivity into anthropological ethnographic studies. Okay. Then I have included a little more information about this idea of reflexivity. Just read about it. I just want to talk about the idea that I have highlighted. I have already discussed this relationship of power and knowledge production. Relationship of power and knowledge production means, according to this postmodernist thinking, there is link between power and knowledge production, because knowledge production is controlled, and knowledge dissemination is controlled, information production is controlled, information dissemination is controlled by people who are powerful, So the way in which the knowledge is produced is dependent on them. The way in which the knowledge is filtered, the way in which the knowledge is disseminated, everything is determined by the powerful people. So we have to be careful about the knowledge which has been generated. Then another important concept associated with this idea of postmodernism is deconstruction. So what is this deconstruction? It's very simple. Deconstruction concept says that, so there is a text called as Ramayana. Ramayana is an important mythology. If we go to a postmodernist scholar and ask this postmodernist scholar to examine Ramayana, he'll say that I'll adopt deconstruction method. Deconstruction method means it's not that I'll try to just look or have a totalitarian, a perspective, a totality perspective, means a broader perspective. I'll try to deconstruct, means say I'll look at Ramayana and I'll try to identify the story of Savari and try to understand the story of Savari. Say I'll try to understand the story of Sugriva. Then I'll try to listen to the viewpoint of that so-called Dobi who has questioned the rule of Lord Rama. So postmodernist would not be interested in learning, or are more interested in the protagonist like Rama, or even the privileged lady Sita. They'll be more interested in looking at the stories of Shavari, or maybe Sugriva, or maybe the Dobi who has questioned the rule of, or maybe they would even come and try to interpret Ramayana in the lens of Rama. Yes, no, there are many books, even in Telugu also there are many versions of Ramayana which tries to give the version of Ravana while explaining the concept of Ramayana. See, it is because why they take this stand, why they want to deconstruct, and why they want to study the margins of the text. Means they are more interested in studying the cultural margins. They are more interested in studying the cultural margins. Means those which are not highlighted, or those which are not given significance or importance in the mythology, because they believe that it is these people who are pushed to the periphery, or it is these people who are pushed to the margins, they are subalterns. They are subalterns. Means these are the people whose voices are muffled. These are the people who are marginalized. These are the people who belong to low socio-economic status. These are the people who are illiterate, ignorant, and backward. And backward. And these are the people who are the victims of structural inequalities. Means the so-called social structure, which is riddled with inequalities, has pushed them to margin, has muffled their voices, has made them marginal. Isn't it? So a postmodernist would be more interested in studying this subalterns. Say, they even go to the extent of claiming that Ravana was deliberately portrayed as evil, or Ravana was deliberately portrayed as an asura because Ravana heads a group of people who are considered as Dalits. So, to perpetuate the upper caste domination or to reinforce the value system of the upper caste over lower caste, deliberately Rama is portrayed as God and deliberately Ravana is portrayed as Asura according to postmodernism. We are not talking any controversies. We are just discussing the topic of postmodernism. Being an anthropology student, we have to be receptive to these ideas. It's not that you have to subscribe to these ideas, nor that I subscribe to these ideas, but this is what postmodernism is. Even you must be aware, students of Usmania, there are some students of Usmania who, there is a dedicated cultural group in Usmania. Every year they celebrate a birthday of Ravana. They celebrate the birthday of Ravana because for them Ravana is the representative, or for them Ravana is the king of Dalits, or Ravana is a representative of Dalits. So Ravana is a subaltern who has been deliberately subjugated. So yes, even this Kancha Ilaya, he is considered an intellectual. He is also known for many controversies, and he is one of the foremost postmodernist scholar in our country. Postmodernist scholar in our country, right? Another classical example of this is, if you are aware, in our country there are many folk gods and goddesses. In our country there are many folk gods and goddesses. Isn't it? Say, some of you must be not even aware, but if you go to your villages or from the places you actually come from, there will be different types of gods and goddesses whose names we would have never heard, whose names we would not even heard, and they would have contributed significantly to your locality, or they would have contributed significantly both socially and economically to the place where you belong. But now that what has happened, now all those local gods and goddesses, they are subjugated, and they are given inferior position. They are given inferior position, and only few gods, Vedic gods like, say for instance, Krishna, Vedic gods like Shiva, Parvati, these are given superior position. These are given superior position, and all those folk gods and folk goddesses who are local, who may be the representatives of the subaltern societies, they are deliberately given inferior position to the extent that even those people who actually belong to that particular subaltern group, they also have forgotten their gods and goddesses, and they started worshipping Vedic gods. Vedic gods. Yes, postmodernist scholars are trying to unearth all those gods and goddesses who were lost in the history because of this subjugation, cultural subjugation being perpetrated upon them by mainstream society. by mainstream society who are economically dominant and politically dominant. Economically dominant and politically dominant. Say, yes, another classical example of this is, look at this. Say, Eklavya is considered a good example of a subaltern. Say, Eklavya is from lower caste, and because of his low caste, he can't get education. And they have no right to learn. He is smart than Arjuna, and yet he can't be great archer because of his caste. I'm not taking this position. I have included these slides just to enable you to better understand the concept of postmodernism. So nothing controversial here. And yes, just because of the reason that Ekalavya comes from the Dalit caste, he is deprived of his basic right to education. And there is also a possibility that he is a non-Aryan. As he is a non-Aryan, which means he does not belong to privileged class, or he does not belong to upper socio-economic status. So Drona was refused archery skills training. Sorry, Drona refused Ekalavya for training him in archery skills. So these are all ideas, and I have included here the definition of subaltern. Say subaltern is nothing but, it refers to the populations that are socially, politically, geographically outside of the hegemonic power structure of the colony and of the colonial homeland. This is not a precise definition. In the contemporary society, subalterns are considered as those people whose voices are muffled, who are subjugated, who are reduced to the periphery of the society, and who often feel discriminated and alienated. Subalterns. Generally, in Indian society, we can consider Dalits, tribals, women, even LGBTs, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgenders, or as subaltern communities. Going little further and trying to understand concepts like, say, postmodernism is against the idea of meta-narratives, and postmodernism is against the idea of blatant generalizations. So what is this postmodernism being against the meta-narratives? Postmodernism being against meta-narratives means, you all know, say, for decades together, often protagonist in the movies is nothing but male protagonist, isn't it? Very rarely we see female protagonist. Say, challenging a meta-narrative basically means to challenge the, see, it's a meta-narrative, right? Meta-narrative means generally the protagonist is often male, and only when the protagonist is male, such movies will become commercially viable. Such movies we often encourage, and such movies we feel it as an entertainment. So that's the convention, that protagonist should be a male. But postmodernists will try to break from this tradition, and they'll try to challenge the meta-narratives. One classical example of this is this so-called movie called as Kill Bill. I haven't seen this movie, but I read in the Wikipedia about the story of this movie. It says maybe the protagonist of this movie is a female protagonist, and she is shown as the powerful character. The good thing is that now the trend in even in our Telugu movies also is changing. And of course, the change has begun with some of the legendary directors like Dasari Narayan Rao, because he is considered as one of the postmodernist director who was influenced by the postmodernist tradition. So he has tendency to objectify the women less in his movies, and some of the movies which he has made, like the popular movie of Vijay Shanti, Osai Ramalamma, all these are a kind of break from the existing tradition of having a male protagonist. So there are some other directors, both in Bollywood and also in Telugu industry, who are trying to break that meta narratives, and they are trying to. And day before yesterday, or some movie got released, right? I have read that review also in Hindu, movie called Color Photo. I also heard that in that movie, generally, often the protagonist is shown in our movies as the one who is fair colored or who is tall. Such people are often shown as protagonists. That movie tries to break that, a stereotype or that meta narrative that protagonists always have to be tall, handsome, like has to be fit or something of that sort. So yes, now that trends are changing, now that tastes of the audiences are also changing, and they are now moving more towards the postmodernist trend. And postmodernism is also against this grounded theoretical perspectives. Postmodernism is not only against meta-narratives, postmodernism is also against grounded theoretical perspectives. What is this grounded theoretical perspectives? It's not, a term might seem difficult. It's not that difficult. See, established theories are nationalism is best, capitalism is best. Isn't it? All these are the theories which are thrusted upon us, right? Nationalism is best, capitalism is best, all societies eventually will become nationalism. At some point of time, people also predicted that communism is the best possible socio-economic model that's going to emerge. All these are nothing but grounded theoretical perspectives which are thrusted upon developing nations and LDCs by so-called developers. But did nationalism solve all the problems of the humanity? Definitely no, isn't it? See, some of the biggest wars in the world are fought in the name of nationalism. That's what Rabindranath Tagore says, that the nation is the biggest hate circle. Caste conflicts has never killed thousands of people, or say even communal conflicts have never killed thousands of people, or for that matter, even regional conflicts have never killed thousands of people. But national conflicts, which are nothing but the wars between nations, have killed not thousands but crores of the people, crores of people. But still, we consider that nation is the best thing which we all want to achieve. That even today, we are fighting for, just for the sake of few thousand hectares of land. We are in a constant or perpetual state of war with Pakistan, and we are in a constant state of war with China, isn't it? Because we were told that nationalism is best. And in the name of nationalism, people are resorting to hyper-nationalist trend. People are resorting to rough patriotism, chest thumping and saying that, and yes, excessive love for, this glorifying of national flag, glorifying of national anthem. All these are cultural symbols. That's it, right? Why we have to glorify it? And even glorification of the military. See, respect towards defense sector or respect towards military is one thing. Glorification is one thing. We tend to glorify military, we tend to glorify so-called defense sector because we were told, because of this hyper-nationalist trend or rough patriotic trend, isn't it? So all these kind of grounded theoretical perspectives which says that nationalism is best. See, in the name of nationalism, we have subjugated thousands of minority cultures all over the world. Thousands of ethnic communities were made to lose their diversity, and they were made to be part of the nations unwillingly. Now that they have even forgot that they belong to so-called ethnic community, isn't it? What we did to Native Americans in Russia, sorry, Native Americans in USA, what was done to indigenous people in Australia, what was done to indigenous people in Africa, isn't it? See, this is what anthropology is more interested in studying. That's what we also discuss in Tribe, Nation, State chapter in chapter 9 of General Studies, paper 2. See, it's not that we have to blindly take the cause of nation. If you're writing General Studies paper 2 or General Studies paper 3, you have to take the stand that nationalism is best, national integrity is best. But in anthropology, you should not blindly write that nationalism is best, national integrity is superior, national integrity is no. Anthropologist also takes the stand of subaltern. Anthropologist talks on behalf of people whose voices are muffled or people who are marginalized in the society. So grounded theoretical perspectives like nationalism is best, capitalism is best, communism is best, isn't it? Who knows a small tribal community which is living a harmonious life with nature, with minimalism, and they have abundance of food, they have pure clean air, they have pure water, and they have well established social institutions, they have a small but easily approachable political system. They might be leading a life which is more happier than the mainstream life which we guys are leading, isn't it? Why did we deny them opportunity to live by thrusting upon them ideas like nationalism, isn't it? So postmodernists will try to question all these grounded theoretical perspectives like nationalism is best, capitalism is best, communism is best, or intensive agriculture is best, or agriculture or industrialization is best. Such grounded theoretical perspectives will be challenged and questioned by postmodernist scholars. Okay, so this is what has been explained in this. Essentialism is not included in our syllabus. You need not read about it. But rest of the ideas, binary thinking. Binary thinking means, what is binary thinking? So we often tend to see things in the perspective of good and bad. So Lord Rama is good, Lord Ravana is bad. Stealing something is bad, not stealing something is good. Stealing is not always bad, isn't it? There are certain occasions wherein an individual, for him to sustain, he might have to resort to stealing, isn't it? So we have to come out of this binary thinking and we have to interpret things as and when, or according to their social context and according to the then social trends. So that binary thinking also has been questioned by postmodernist scholars. Okay, so yes, the grand narratives has lost its credibility, and praising of the local and temporary knowledge is the idea behind postmodernism. This is the stage onto which the postmodernism, each contributing on his own mini narrative in the form of liberating postmodern expressions. And the one who I am showing here is Kancha Illayya. Is considered as the foremost postmodernist scholar in India. His book Post-Hindu India, it's a very controversial book, but yes, being an anthropology student, it's not wrong for you to be aware of books like this and scholars like Kanchai. Mainstream society definitely shows him as an deviant, or try to portray him as attention seeker or attention monger, something of that sort. But we should not be quick in judging anyone without trying to understand the real intent. He just tries to put forward the idea that Dalits in this society are subjugated, or they have been marginalized for thousands of years, and now this is high time they have to regain the dignity which they have lost. They have to regain the cultural glory which is their natural, which is part of their society. So these are the kind of ideas which are put forward by people like Kancha Ilai. Okay, so yes. Yeah. So what is the difference between reflexivity is one of the component. Reflexivity means it is asking anthropologists to be more responsible, asking anthropologists to be more sensible, asking anthropologists to be more responsible, asking anthropologists to be more sensible. Okay. So